Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome to another virtual Creative Mornings. I'm Stephen Wilhelm, the host of the Calgary chapter. So thank you, everybody, for attending. I can't tell you how much I'm looking forward to being back in person at C-Space someday. We were initially talking about doing some type of hybrid event this fall with a few people live in the room and the rest connecting through Zoom, but that's probably gonna not be pushed back a bit and probably won't happen to sometime in the new year. So hang in there. We will be back at some point. So let's get going here. So there's always a few people who have never been to a Creative Mornings event before. So I always like just to start off by reading our manifesto, which has been slightly modified for our post-COVID area. So let me get that set up. All right. Everyone is creative. A creative life requires bravery and action, honesty and hard work. We are here to support you, celebrate with you, and encourage you to make the things you love. We believe in the power of community. We believe in giving a damn. We believe in face-to-face connections, in learning from others, in jazz hands, virtual claps, and virtual snaps. We bring together people who are driven by passion and purpose, confident that they will inspire one another and inspire change in neighborhoods and cities around the world. Everyone is welcome. So that is Creative Mornings. I'm going to just take a couple more minutes here and thank all the great people and companies that help make this happen. So first off, our global sponsors, a big thank you to MailChimp, Creative Mornings' official global partner for marketing. MailChimp has made in collaboration with Vice an essentials video, which provides a glimpse into how small businesses around the US have found ways to adapt while interacting with the public among the COVID-19 pandemic. So you can see how a restaurant, bike messenger, laundromat, a food bank, and more are coping with cutbacks while staying safe. I'm going to go ahead and post the link for this in the chat. Just give me just 2 seconds for that. All right, so the link for that video is in the chat. As well, I'd like to thank Basecamp, our global partner for project management, and to their groundbreaking new email platform, Hey. And Basecamp probably wouldn't exist today if it were not for an email that David Hansen sent Jason Fried in 2001, and that correspondence was the beginning of a partnership that produced Basecamp, several books, and most recently, Hey, the company's new email service. And you can listen to Basecamp's love letter to email on this episode of Rework. You can hear from David and Jason, as well as other artists, writers, and founders about the emails that changed their lives. And I'm going to go ahead and post this link as well into the chat. So they are there if you'd like to take a look into those. Okay, I'm now going to take just a moment to thank our local sponsors. First up, big thanks to Jason Sweet, our official photographer for the Calgary chapter. A shout out to Rod Anderson from Sandbox Brand Marketing. The coffee you would have been drinking this morning is from the Roastery, and established in '85. Roastery is Calgary's original specialty coffee shop. I'd also like to recognize our video sponsor, Day One Media, helps businesses tell great stories with video, touching the heart and minds of your customer. And as well, I do want to thank C-Space, where we normally have our events. And certainly if you're from Calgary and if this is your first Creative Morning event and haven't been to C-Space, make sure you come back once we have things opened up. It's a beautiful arts community in this city. And finally, just a shout out to recognize all our Creative Morning volunteers that pitch in to make this happen. So that none of this happens without the help of everybody involved. Okay. Let's get on with our event. So the global theme this month is transit. And the format, like always, will be about a 20-minute talk. We're going to keep everybody on mute at this time. If you could just maybe double check that you are on mute. And after the talk, what we're going to do is we'll separate out into random breakout rooms of around between 2 and 4 people each for 7 minutes. And then you'll get a chance to meet some of your fellow attendees and talk about what resonated with you. And for sure, make sure you introduce yourself. Don't forget to unmute yourself, turn on your camera. And certainly if you're having issues in the breakout room or if you're in a room all by yourself, you can always head back to the main room by clicking the leave room button, or there's a help button. I can check in with you. So, and after that 7 minutes, the breakout room will automatically kick you back into the main presentation. And then from there, we're just going to do a final Q&A for about another 10 minutes. All right. Okay, so our special guest this morning is Jennifer Thompson. Jennifer has been the acting manager of the City of Calgary's Arts and Culture Division for more than a year ago, after leading the city's public art program through a total restructure. She began her time with the City of Calgary 7 years ago in communications and media relation roles across the corporation. Her most recent role prior to arts and culture as senior advisor to the general manager of community services from 2016 to 2018. And prior to working in Calgary, Jennifer worked in the United States and Vancouver, primarily in the fields of communication, marketing, and design, experience both in the not-for-profit and private sector. Jennifer holds an executive MBA from the University of Calgary, a professional designation in governance and public policy from the University of Victoria, and both a Bachelor of Science in Multimedia Design and designations in graphic design from the University of Wilmington, Delaware, United States. Although she has an affinity for problem solving and policy development work, Jennifer is actively involved in both the arts and culture sector and social justice in Calgary. She's been a board member for both the Sled Island Music Festival and the University of Calgary's Student Legal Assistance, and has been a volunteer for numerous arts and culture-related organizations, including Calgary's Folk Music Festival for the past 9 years. So give me just 2 seconds and I'm going to pass it over to Jennifer. There we go. All right. Everybody, welcome Jennifer Thompson.
Hi there. I'm Jen. Thanks so much for having me today. I'm really excited to be here. I'm here today to talk a little bit about the public art program and its relationship with transit and more broadly transportation. I'd like to start off a little bit today, if some of you have been following it along, where our public art program is today. So as you may have heard, in 2017, City Council suspended all capital projects related to public art. So that came along after Beaufort Towers was installed. Beaufort Towers is an installation along Canada's Highway 1 on the way out of town to Calgary. That was a transportation project, so very relative to our conversation today. And there were some significant issues that City Council saw and that the public saw with that piece in particular. We'll talk a little bit more about the process of how that piece came to be. But in any case, that caused City Council to sort of say, hey, City Administration, why don't you take a look at the program? We've had some issues with public engagement, with access to being involved, or the community being involved in how public art projects get developed, and the location of where the public art projects are situated. Specifically within the case of Beaufort Towers, it is unfortunately in a site that is not accessible to the public, which really is what we want when we want to see public art projects installed. So in 2017, the public art funding was, for all intents and purposes, suspended for the capital projects specifically. We had a number of projects that were still on the go and in flight that City Council said, please continue with those. There are some legal issues if we cancel them, and a lot of them are what I'm going to be talking about today. But in any case, the program was suspended, and that's when I came on to take a look at how can we improve our already great public art program. I don't believe that the public art program is broken. I think that, you know, it's been in place for the last over 16 years. It's had some really great projects that have come out of that program. But you know, after you've been doing something for a long time, you always need to look at yourself and readjust. And I think that's true in any form of business, especially the arts. The arts are innovative and creative and always looking forward and always trying to push the envelope. And I think that's really what we're trying to do today, is how can we do public art in the city of Calgary in a new way that meets Calgarians' expectations. So fast forward to today, City Council just over a year ago, or actually just under a year ago, directed us to move the public art program to an arm's length organization. And this model is really taken from several Canadian cities and some other North American cities across the United States. In particular, our neighbors to the north, Edmonton, have an arm's length public art program that has been quite successful. So this is something that, this is a model that we're looking at and have really taken some of the pieces that Edmonton has been successful with, that Winnipeg, that Lethbridge, that they have all had some really great successes in their public art models. And we're trying to adopt those here in Calgary. And so right now, the public art program has gone out to tender. So we're out on the market looking for a bidder, a successful bidder, to take over the public art program here in Calgary. In addition to that, we're also looking for selection panel members. So any of you here who are interested in being a part of the new direction for public art and some of those decision makings of who will get the program, we do have a posting out right now for selection panel members to come and participate in reviewing all the bids that we get for public art. So it's a really exciting time, lots of things on the go, and certainly lots of change in a time where we're adapting globally to some pretty significant changes. So, but that being said, I'll get started on what the transportation portfolio looks like. So I'm just going to share my screen here if I can. Let me see here. Stephen, how do I get my PowerPoint up?
There should be at the bottom of the window. Yeah.
Okay, so here we go. Okay, so we'll start at the beginning here. There we go. Oops. Slideshow. Let's go to view. Okay, So this isn't a transportation project, but this is one of my favorite pieces, and I always like to use it on the title slide. So this piece here is called Convergence, and this was part of the new rec center, the new YMCA that's up in Rocky Ridge. This is a beautiful piece by Haddad and Drugan, an artist duo from Seattle. And this started in 2015, but again, not related to transportation, but I just thought I'd put this up here because it's such a beautiful piece, and it's kind of hidden away in the Northwest. And if you ever get a chance to go up there, I encourage you to take a look. So, so looking at what we do here in transportation, so a little bit about the public art policy. We have here in Calgary something called the Percent for Art policy. This is an international standard that actually was created in Philadelphia back in the 50s. And how this public art policy actually got created, a little bit about the history of that, is when the United States was going through the massive boom that they were after the Second World War. They were just building like crazy. And in Philadelphia in particular, they sort of said, hey, we don't want to live in a concrete jungle. We'd like to make our city look great as well. We'd like to have our public spaces be vibrant and actually inviting and have people come, because we know that there are safety implications when we create vibrant spaces. We actually increase safety when we make things where people actually want to congregate. So they created something called the Percent for Art policy, and that takes 1% of all capital funding from a municipality and invests it in public art. And the intent of that is to create more vibrant spaces. So what you're looking at here is the 4th Street Underpass enhancement. So right now, we actually have a program that transportation and our urban strategies group is working on with public art, where we are actually integrating an artist team within a design team to create more enhanced underpasses. And this is really to create safe spaces. So this underpass in particular, we had heard, I don't know if any of you remember if you work downtown or if you had seen it before, but it was quite derelict and there was a lot of issues. There was a lot of crime issues that were happening within this space. And it was overall just not, people didn't feel comfortable. There was a ton of research and surveys done by our engagement team. And overall it was found the key piece that people said is it was too dark and it was too narrow to get through. And today, you know, that's certainly something that we can all appreciate is we need our space when we're talking about COVID. So transportation in collaboration with the public art team said, okay, how can we take that 1% of capital and invest it into making this space great? And so what they did is we had recommended, again, learning from a lot of the previous public art projects that we had taken on, is we said you really need to integrate the artists into the design team for something like this if you're going to just have hard infrastructure. So when transportation and our urban strategies, our planning team were working together, they put a call out for bids for architects, but also said, hey, designers, you need to have artists come with you to design this piece. So essentially they weren't accepting bids that didn't have artists actually integrated into the design team. And one thing that we also have heard from Calgarians is that we know that they want to see more local and I would say more nationally recognized artists. International artists are somewhat not favorites amongst Calgarians right now. They want to see their local talent reflected in the art. So this is an artist from Vancouver, and if you've ever walked down here at nighttime, this underpass has really changed, taken a full 180, whereas you can actually see yourself, your shadow reflected across the underpass. So if you're walking on the left side, you can see your shadow crossed over onto the right side. And this is a beautiful piece. I've even heard some of the more conservative counselors say that they really like this piece because they find it quite accessible. And they find that it does create more safe of a space, which is exactly what it was intended to do. So moving forward to another transportation project, and these two projects, I should say, they were in flight when the program itself was on hold. Most of our projects that were currently in flight were transportation related projects. So this project is actually funded by the Inglewood Bridge Enhancement Project, which is just kitty corner from where this is located in Inglewood. This is called Wolf and the Sparrows. This is a Canadian artist by the name of Brandon Vickard. He came to Calgary in 2016 and 2017 to take a look at how he could be inspired by Calgary landscapes and monuments within Calgary. His practice is traditionally in monument. And interesting story, and I won't go into the full detail because I don't want to take up too much of our time here. But we actually have a monument to General Wolfe, who was a naval captain who colonized Quebec here in Calgary, and that monument was given here from Eric Harvey back in the 50s and 60s. So long story short, that original monument is now in Mount Royal, in the community of Mount Royal. And when Brandon saw this coming from Ontario, there's a ton of information about General Wolfe out there. And he said, okay, well, what's the connection to the West with this monument? So he did a full-size replica of that monument. However, he wanted to take a more Western spin on it and really work with our Indigenous communities and with the local community to understand, what is the connection and how can I make this more of a Calgary piece? So what you're seeing here today is the entire head of General Wolfe covered in sparrows. And sparrows are not actually Indigenous to Canada. They were brought over by the settlers way back in the day. And so these sparrows are actually, if you were to turn, if you can see on the left here where they're cleaning the statue, those sparrows are actually flying General Wolfe back to England, and they're pointed in the way of England. On this plinth, so on the opposite side of where the plaque is, there is a plaque that has Blackfoot text. We had an elder come and translate the original description of this monument into Blackfoot. And we had a ceremony for this piece so that we could really make this relative to the land and the history of where this piece sits. This piece sits right at the convergence of the elbow and the bow in Inglewood, and right adjacent to such a historical piece of what Inglewood was, where the original bridge for Inglewood actually was created. So really taken in by the community, but again, another piece that's been funded by transportation. So now moving a little bit more into transit, which is, this project is a really exciting one that has been on the go now since 2015. So if some of you have been living in Calgary for some time, there's a lot of controversy around the Southwest BRT and BRT lines being installed across our city. And so again, that project had 1% of its budget going into public art. And so because we as well were going through a controversial time in public art, we really wanted to make sure that we were taking into account all of the pieces that Calgarians wanted to see within this project. So we really focused on local, we really focused on accessible, we really focused on let's use what we have, because we didn't want to have any extra costs to Calgarians. So what we did is we had taken pieces from our public art collection. So the public art collection is actually made up of over 1,200 pieces of both fine art and sculpture, and then of course our outdoor pieces. And we curated the entire line. And so the line spans over 130 stations, I believe, across the city. And so in particular, on the southwest portion, we've taken we made prints out of the all artist pieces that we had that were local or had worked in Calgary. And then in our southeast line and the ones along International Ave, we heard from that community that they have such a love for the arts up there, and they have a lot of local art groups up there. So we work with that community to do a couple of different things. We did a call specifically for artists who were living in that area. And what you're looking at here is Super Salad by Erin Freed. She's a local artist who lives in along International Avenue. And we selected pieces that were really reflective of the community within international area, Greater Forest Lawn area. So when you're traveling across Calgary, and you're traveling through the BRT line, the whole line is really a moving gallery of Calgary's collection, which is, I don't think people really understand. We did try to push that story out, but unfortunately, whenever we try to go with a positive story about public art, we don't end up with the same type of attention as we do when we are in the media for something that maybe not make us not so popular. But Livewire did pick this up, and so this is the story from that in 2018. And I was really happy that local artists got some attention here. And again, her name is Erin Freed. So looking at our north line, this is Margaret Shelton. And Margaret was an Alberta artist. She spent a lot of time in Calgary. She was born in 1918 and lived until 1984. And she primarily did lino cuts. But these pieces are 3 pieces that we have in the collection. And we do try to get those pieces out and show them in galleries. We lend to the Glenbow, we lend to Contemporary Calgary. We work with our local artist-run centers to show pieces when we can. Unfortunately, the City of Calgary does not have its own gallery. However, we are hoping that with our new direction and the new proponent of the public art program, that these pieces will be able to get some more airtime. So we're hoping that a local gallery or a local center will be able to show these pieces more so. But that being said, we were able to use the bus rapid transit line shelters as a living gallery. So there is a plaque on each of these pieces that talks about the history of the artist and who the artist was. So when you're sitting there waiting for the bus, you can learn a little bit about your own Calgary art history. So here's another piece. These are some of my favorite ones, and these are again on the south line. And so this picture isn't as great, but I think just to show the diversity of work that we have in the collection there. And so one of the things that we also wanted to do was we had some additional funding from the 1% that we were able to create a more I guess meaningful program instead of just taking the money and then of course curating the entire line of the collection within those shelters. So again, we had worked really closely with the artist community over the past year and a half, where we wanted to hear, we had gone through some extensive focus groups where the artists told us what they want to see in calls for artists, what they want to see in programming for artists, and what kind of opportunities they want to see for the local arts community. One of the hardest things that we have within the City of Calgary is we run public art projects the same way we run million and billion-dollar construction projects. So if you're a local artist or an emerging artist, or an artist who is sort of just getting your feet on the ground, applying for our public art projects are incredibly cumbersome. And you're competing with international artists because we have to follow NAFTA rules here in Calgary, at the City of Calgary. So that means that when we have a project that's over $250,000 or $500,000, we have to put it to an international tender. This is what has, unfortunately, or I guess in some cases fortunately, had international artists being attracted to Calgary and want to produce here. However, it has created that scarcity for local artists when we have public art projects. So what we did is taking that concept and listening to our local arts community is there was $250,000 that was part of the Percent for Art for the International Avenue BRT line. And what we did is we took that $250,000 and we broke it into several components so that we didn't have to just take that and put the entire thing out to tender, because again, we'd run into the same problem of having international artists competing with our local audience. And we really wanted this to be reflective of the International Avenue community and the Greater Forest Lawn community. So what we did is we created two sects. There are 13 different artists who have been successful in this project, in this program. We had an emerging artist category. So looking for artists who are looking to start to get their feet wet within the public art realm. And that's what you're looking at on the left here is Mary Hasdeck. She's a local illustrator, a beautiful artist who is part of our emerging artist program. Sharon Stevens is a is a local artist who has been working in the public realm for a number of decades here in Calgary. We assigned her as a mentor to these local emerging artists so that they had some guidance along the way. And this piece is, she did a ton of community engagement and created these really whimsical illustrations to brighten up sort of this fence. And this area in Forest Lawn, from what I understand, has had some safety issues. So again, what the locations that were picked for these pieces do run along the transit line, but they were also identified by the public of, hey, we want to see these areas brightened up. We'd like to see more art and more, we'd like to see a safer space created. And so that's what Mary did here with these illustrations. Now looking on the right, if you can see, this is local sculptor. He's also a professor at our AU Arts here in Calgary. His name is Vahe Tomakian. He is part of our established artist program. And so this piece here is a sculptor. He had created an artist collective where he and 4 actual emerging artists who live in the Forest Lawn area have got together. He is mentoring them, but he is the lead artist. So this is all his craftsmanship. But he's working with this team, and they created this piece of 2 individuals dancing. And this will be installed in the Greater Forest Lawn area along the transit line. So take a look at that. If you get a chance, there's a number, like I said, there's 13 artists installations, and I didn't want to go through them all today, but they are in the Greater Forest Lawn area along that BRT line. And they're all quite stunning. We do hope to have a celebration for them, whether it be virtual or through the media or maybe something small in person to celebrate all the work that these artists have done. Because I do think Calgary should know that they do have this beautiful, vibrant local arts community. And so that is all I have today.
Good. Okay. Well, as people get back to the room, I'll just kind of kick things off here. Go ahead and feel free to unmute yourself if you want to ask some questions. I'm going to sort of kick it off for Jennifer here. I'll unmute Jennifer, and should spotlight her. Where are you? There we are. Oh, there we go. Okay. Jennifer, I'm curious, the transit shelter program that you've installed all this artwork in, is that something that is unique to Calgary, or is that modeled off of other programs in other cities?
Yeah, it is modeled off of other programs in other cities. So there are a number of cities, and I can't think of all of them off of the top of my head. They're all over Canada. I think Saskatoon and Winnipeg in particular. But also there's a number of cities within the US who have their public art collection photographs and things posted in their transit shelters. The difference, I think, between those and ours is what is the design. So most times, I think when you think of a traditional transit station, as they're called today, or shelter, um, they're just sort of like a little box. They're not as vast and as bright as the ones that we've installed here in Calgary. So we can't take credit for the design of the shelter per se, but what was great is working with that transit team to design those shelters, recognizing that they were all glass. We were able to really showcase the art in those shelters. But yeah, it's certainly not an original idea.
Yeah, I mean, those shelters are stunning, like the whole glass enclosure, and that really showcases the art because it's so well lit. And yeah.
Yeah, they're beautiful.
Okay, and I'm going to ask one more question before I get everybody else to jump in as well. And I'm just curious. So, from your perspective on the management side of this whole program, what's a bigger problem? Like, is it vandalism and graffiti on this, or is it public backlash on artwork that the general public doesn't like? Yeah, I'm curious.
Yeah. So with this in particular, we've only had actually like right off the bat, we had a couple of pieces of graffiti up in the north on the north line, and it was really minor. Um, Certainly not as frequent as we get a graffiti on some of our pieces in the core, and not transit related, just
Yeah.
pieces we have in general. No, I would say the thing that we contend with the most in Calgary for anything that we're doing, and funny enough, not when it came to this piece at all, but is the public backlash and political backlash for public art. There's a lot of misinformation out there. It's really easy, one of our local news channels, and I won't use their name, but whenever they print a story about public art, they always use the pictures of Traveling Light or the Blue Ring and Beaufort Towers. And like I had mentioned, we have over 1,200 pieces in the public art collection. 80% of that is made up of local artists from over a century ago, which is showcased along the BRT line. And we had really hoped with this line in particular, with this project in particular, that we would sort of break a lot of the stereotypes. But unfortunately, it's a pretty steep hill to climb. We do have, and I don't want to scapegoat the media, but it's really hard to get the message out that we are doing the right thing, and that we have been listening to Calgarians, and we are moving things forward. I mean, all the pieces that I showed you have been installed and implemented since the freeze, and those pieces were in flight after learning from some of the missteps with Traveling Light. And then of course again we pivoted again when we after Beaufort Towers. So we are listening, and we are trying to do the right thing here. I do feel that the message will get out, but it's an unfortunate disservice to our local arts community, and that's really who suffers at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So anybody else want to jump in there? Actually, sorry, I'm going to throw in one more question.
Sure.
Is there an online guide to the artwork and where it's located on the transit lines that people can reference?
Yeah, so I just posted that in the breakout room, but I found the link, and I will copy it because I just sent it to Jackie, who is my partner in the breakout room there. But let me post it to everyone here. So you can see in this link, if you go to this web page, it's got the 3 max lines, as they're called. And I apologize. I always get the names of the lines wrong. I call them north, south, because that's what we were doing on the project. And now they have colors attached to them. So
Yeah.
yeah, so I actually live really close to the purple line, so I should call it that. But anyway, but if you take a look there, each of the lines has a PDF downloadable version that has every art piece, every artist, and their location along the line listed in those PDFs. So
Awesome.
yeah.
Okay, everybody jump in. I know there's questions.
It's funny that
I will jump in. Mel and I had a great conversation, and we liked, we like learning about these projects, and I like that and we both like the way that you can learn about the artists. And we were just talking about how, Calgary could be like a museum, right? Like, or a gallery. And Mel was thinking, well, it would be really cool to have an app so that maybe just do a QR code, and you could hear maybe an audio of the artist or the backstory, or it could be, something that you read. But I think that whether it's local artists or international artists, I think if people learn about the backstory and where they're coming from, that people will warm up to the public art. Katie Green was on a few months back, and like, just, I've seen those murals a million times, but like learning about her process and how she engaged with the community. And I think when people see art, they don't necessarily know that maybe there was engagement with the community, and once they learn that, then they're warmer to it. Anyway, we just thought it would be cool to have this app that, Mel, do you want to speak to it?
Yeah, so we thought maybe we'll give you this proposal, and do you have any funding? Steve and Jason can help out. But yeah, just, I guess the idea is like, so that it's not just maybe the transit art, or maybe part of the bump or like the mural project, right? So that we'll have like a directory of all the artists in the city, and that might be a nice co-fit activity to do for folks to explore with your families all the art in Calgary, things like that. Yeah, so because it definitely gives us a bit of a deeper layer of like learning who the artist was, how the process was, and like just give people a bit of a call to action of like, okay, if you want to learn more, go here. So.
That's a great idea. We had thrown around the idea of doing a hackathon. So because we do have open data at the city of Calgary, and and we do actually have an online map for the public art program. It's quite cumbersome, and it's not it's hard to get to, and on your mobile device it's not super quick.
Yeah.
But I think what I like about what you said is, so yes, the city has a vast public art collection, but then it's really spun off into these other avenues where, Wonderland that's in front of the Bow is not part of the public art collection. That was done by CMLC. At Katie Green's pieces, great example, East Village and the library, those are all done by our Calgary Land Municipal Corporation. And so, and then on top of that, there's Bump, there's so much art out there, and you're right. I don't think Calgarians know the whole story, and it would be really nice to have a centralized place for all those apps. You'd probably be pretty popular if you were able to build that. You'd probably be a pretty popular app, and
All right, Creative Morning folks.
Oh, yeah.
It's just, with hackathon, I actually have attended the Open Data BC hackathon, but there's not much you can do in like a 3-day hackathon, right? So I'd rather, I'm also part of the Registered Graphic Designers ethics community too. Like, there's ethic question on that too, right? Like, would you rather have an actual app or like, or like free work? But yeah, anyway, that's a different.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
We have the same conversation about artists, so yeah.
I'm curious as well, how is it scheduled to rotate that artwork around different areas of the city, or how long do they stay there in the one spot?
So the pieces in the BRT station are basically semi-permanent, so we won't be rotating them. So one thing that's kind of an interesting fact about how we do things at the City of Calgary is we have to go with the lowest bidder when we do any type of construction, even when it comes to art, which really isn't a great approach when you're dealing with artwork. So in this case, we actually had gone out to tender for the glass, and unfortunately, and I say this, I say unfortunately, but I'm not trying to slight any companies, but we had a local company who actually did all of Edmonton's shelters. They're located both in Edmonton and Calgary, and they specialize in special glass to ensure that it keeps the life and the vibrancy of art outside. Unfortunately, they came in too high. So we actually had to go with a company from China and ship the glass over from China. And the quality is just not where we wanted it to be. And we ended up having to go back and forth with the company overseas and have it shipped, have glass shipped over a number of times. It took twice as long than investing in a local organization. And that's the irony of working here, having the arts organization located within the city of Calgary, like within the organization. If we had been external, like in Edmonton, where they could just hire that local company, they could work directly with them, they could get that specialized glass. It cost a little bit more, however, the timing was better, quality was better, and then you don't spend more on maintenance long term. So we're, knock on wood, doing great now with these shelters, but you know, the long term sustainability of that glass is still a little bit unknown about how long the life cycle will be of those.
And that was part of your efforts to create a arm's length organization. Like that would be the benefit of doing that.
Yeah, that's correct. So it's not that we don't have to follow the same rules when the organization moves outside in terms of creating fair and equitable opportunities, but you can run a public art program like it should be for its own industry. So like here at the city, again, we have to run a public art program like we run the construction of a bridge. You got to get the lowest bid on concrete if you're going to build a plinth. And that just doesn't suit art. So, you know, when you move it outside, you actually create a more grassroots sort of organization that can actually work with local vendors, local construction companies, local individuals who can create art and suit the site and suit the pieces, and will create more sustainable art in the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And anybody else? Oh, okay, going once, going twice. All right, that's it. Well, thank you very much, Jennifer. That was fantastic. I really enjoyed hearing more about the art program here. That's it, everybody. I'll just leave the meeting open a little longer if anyone wants to stay and chat or grab any of the links in the chat, so you don't have to panic. Thanks, and have a great rest of your Friday, and see you next month. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, Stephen.
Thank you.